Hello and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to both myself and Anna Hunt. I am Michelle Walton and I'm the Executive Head Teacher and Primary Director for Lionheart Academies Trust. Anna Stewart is Head of School for Hallam Fields, which is one of our primary schools. Anna is also going to talk you through our journey for hybrid and remote learning this afternoon. Before I pass over to Anna, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about our trust. We are a family of schools in Leicester and Leicestershire that comprises of 6 secondary, 1 sixth form and 4 primary schools that are all very diverse. We have schools with low FMS uptake and schools with high FMS uptake. We have schools where the majority of students are from ethnic minorities, and we have schools where the students are predominantly white British. The vision of our trust is really about what we all believe in, and it underpins everything that we do. It's any young person from any background deserves an equal chance to be successful in whatever they choose to do. Our trust has 2 distinctive elements of this: academic and holistic development. This is then supported by the R's across our schools. In the primary schools, we have respect, responsibility, resourcefulness, resilience, reciprocity and reflection. And these help, the R's help in supporting our children to become resilient and confident learners who are able to face challenges, but at the same time take up most of the opportunities that are presented to them. One of the things I think has come through a lot of this is a quote from Helen Keller. Although we can do so little, together we can do so much. And I think this is fundamentally important in the fact that one of the key things that have driven us through all of the last year and the challenges we've faced is the collaboration across our primary schools. And that has helped with our journey, I think, with hybrid and blended learning. So I'm going to hand you over now to Anna to tell you more about that. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, please add them to the chat function and hopefully we'll have a chance to discuss at the end. So over to you, Anna.
Hi everybody, I'm going to talk about the hybrid and blended learning journey within our primary school environments. At the start of the first lockdown, when that was announced, across our primary schools we were used to using some technology to support our learning, but this was limited in its environment. We were using White Rose, we were used to using websites, for example, Times Table Rockstars, and we were already using Tapestry, which is embedded in EYFS. However, we knew that we needed to plan quickly for remote education, whilst also thinking about what our in-school provision would look like. For the early years, our journey started really quickly. Tapestry is an online platform that we used already and was embedded within our primary schools. This might mean we were able to move really quickly to home learning on that start of the first lockdown, and we were able to introduce topic, English, maths work for all children within early years, as well as sharing stories by the class teachers. Parents were able to share their observations of what the children were doing at home, and there was a real quick and easy communication between parents and staff, and then the teachers were able to provide feedback. This was very different for our years 1 to year 6. We had to move very rapidly to using a virtual learning environment, which was unfamiliar to all staff, parents and pupils. Luckily, within the trust, there was already a secondary model that we were able to use. This was called our VLE, we call it for short. It's our learning environment where all of our work is now used. We adapted it really quickly for primary school, but that was a very quick method and a lot of work needed to be done behind the scenes. All children needed to be issued login details. We quickly created help guides, not only just for staff, but also for parents and pupils. We did a lot of one-to-one support with teachers and with parents and with our children, so they were able to access this from home. We also did some small group support for parents to help them accessing our learning environment and to manoeuvre their way around. And this was a process we adapted as we went along. As you can see, I've put some examples, just some pictures on there of how we set up our learning environment with it clearly labelled to try and support the parents at home. As we got through that first lockdown, we were continuing through our journey, our staff confidence grew and the children were able to access our work a lot more easily, and we developed our virtual learning environment even further. This is where we started introducing quizzes, so we had our staff trained and then shown how to make quizzes on the VLE for the children to use at home. This was brilliant because the children were starting to share with us what they had been doing, but also gain feedback from ourselves. We then moved on to introducing assignments where children were able to upload their work and share their work with us and get personalised feedback from the staff. Throughout that lockdown, we also started to use Microsoft Teams and introduce a live lessons, so the children were able to access those sessions from teachers who were familiar to themselves and also access recorded lessons. One of the real true benefits of working within the Trust was we were able to share this work out between our schools, and our teachers were able to collaborate and really work closely together. As I mentioned, we did need to rapidly do a lot of CPD for our staff. We purchased across the Trust visualisers for each classroom. This was so useful for all of us to be able to share with the children their work and what they've been doing, but also to demonstrate a model for our children at home. These then also became a vital tool when we moved on to hybrid teaching. To help support our staff, we've created a whole CPD section of our VLE and also ran staff meetings and drop-in sessions and opportunities for staff to learn using all of these new environment areas. We did training on the visualisers. We also had a lot of training on Microsoft Teams, created handouts and guides. We had online sessions and videos on how to set up a class, how to deliver your first lessons, how to share a presentation, how to unmute yourself, which I need to still remember. We also had some training on our VLE, how to access the quizzes, how to create different areas, and how to upload our work. There was a real need for staff CPD, and that was a core focus of our first lockdown. As we moved through that journey, the schools reopened in September and we continue to use our virtual learning environment. This became a really vital tool for all of our schools within the Trust. Although we weren't able to sit in a room together and have meetings, we were able to access Microsoft Teams and have our planning times and our collaboration of work in the same way that we would do previously. We were also able to use the VLE environment to share resources and share our planning and our activities. This work was continually over development, and through the autumn term, we planned for all of our afternoon topics collaboratively across the Trust. Here we realigned our curriculum to make sure that every school was doing the same topic at the same time, and our teachers were given time to plan in subject leadership teams as well as in year group teams. The year group planning was really important. This allowed all of the teachers to collaborate together and think about how they could deliver the best for our children, whether they were in school or whether they were working from home. We really had to quickly adapt the way we were teaching, and being able to use that collaborative approach was really helpful for us. The subject leader teams were developed across the Trust as well, which helped to unite all science leads, English leads, etc. to work together for their monitoring evaluation and for their discussions and training. Part of coming back to school, we all developed our own business continuity plan. I'm going to show you just a few photos from our continuity plan. So we made sure that it really included that safeguarding and had a real element of being able to make sure our children are protected, whether they are in school or were working from home. We then moved on to think about our planning and using an action plan of what we would do if children were in school full time, if we had to close a whole bubble, and then what we would do if one or two children needed to quarantine or isolate at home. This then built up to become our whole primary continuity plan, where we took the DFE expectations and made sure we were meeting all of those. Here is an overview of what our plan looks like and how we were going to make a whole school approach. I've split this up into EYFS and Year 1 because we currently use our in the moment style planning with EYFS and Year 1, and they work really closely together. They use Tapestry for all of their blended and hybrid learning, whereas in years 2 to 6 we moved to using the VLE as well as our live lessons through Microsoft Teams. With children in years 2 to 6, we thought really carefully about what we would need to do and how we could best support them, whether our whole bubble was closed for our blended learning, but also how we could support our children in a hybrid approach if 1, 2, 3 or so children needed to isolate. We wanted to ensure that our children, whether they were at home or in school, were getting the same quality first teaching. We ensured that daily contact still happened, work was set through the VLE, but also the children from home were able to access the same lessons that we had in school and still receive that high quality feedback from their class teacher. So over to the hybrid teaching now. This is where we really thought about how we could teach children who were in school and children at home at the same time. Now, this is a really difficult job if you're the class teacher, but it's so rewarding. We thought about our hybrid policy and we developed a policy that we shared with staff that we invite children to join the lessons via Teams where the technology allows and when it was appropriate. We had to think really carefully about which lessons were appropriate for the children to join. For example, a PE lesson might not be the best one, but the maths lessons work really well, as do some of the English and science, etc. We worked with staff to think about the best ways to set up these meetings. One way was thinking about sharing our screen, which is like we're doing now, or the other way was to use the visualisers. The staff in my school found that strategy to be most useful because they could point the visualiser at their teaching whiteboard and the children from home would still be able to see the teacher who is writing on the whiteboard at the same time. We decided the approach we were going to use was through Microsoft Teams, and we found lots of the functions really useful and varying in which year group the children were working with. The hands up function is brilliant for the younger children, so they can then talk. And we found the chat was brilliant with the older children. They were then able to answer questions and quickly share their feedback within the chat function. Throughout the time of using this hybrid teaching, we've really developed what we're doing and how we're delivering and started to use polls, which I've put an example here for you. So the children were able to vote for their favourite answer. And we've been using other strategies, for example, 2 statements in the chat function. Can you give a thumbs up to which one you think is true, which is false? And we've been able to use all of those AFL strategies we use in the classroom with those children at home. Part of my role, I've been working in a research group across the trust about hybrid teaching. We've been looking at how that works for children all the way from primary through to sixth form college, where it works best and how we can support the people who are delivering it. Obviously, this is an approach that is developing over time, and I'm really happy to help anybody who's giving a go at this approach. We, as a school, have really worked carefully and we've used all the schools within the trust to help give us advice and knowledge. Our secondary colleagues had a go at doing this first, so that was really useful when we started in primary to hear their feedback of what worked really well. It is really daunting, and obviously the first time that a lot of our staff did it, they found a lot of technical issues, the children were struggling, they were struggling, and it was okay to admit we didn't do it right the first time. But soon the staff were into the swing of it and were really supportive of each other. Also within the trust, part of our research group, that we've designed this training page, which is part of our Teams, one of our Microsoft Teams, and all staff within the trust are able to access it and look at research support and ask questions and look at the CPD available for them. What I thought would be most useful is to find out what some of our staff thought about the hybrid teaching and how it worked for them. So I've got some quotes and some information now about what our staff have said. So one of the teachers at Hallam Fields, one of my year 3 teachers, said it's really helpful to have a teacher or another LSA in monitoring the chat box so that the children at home can still talk and message that way, as well as the teacher at the front carrying on to teach the whole class. There is a slight delay when asking the children at home a question out loud, so they found it was better to use the chat function and type the answers so the rest of the class weren't waiting for the child at home to answer out loud. We found this worked really easy with maths to share answers and the children at home could mark their own work. Sometimes there was some difficulties around behaviour management and just checking that everyone was safe and secure. And it could be hard when children at home needed some extra help, but we found strategies around that. A teacher at Riverside who in year 4 tried the hybrid approach and said it was really successful. They had several children at home accessing, and they really felt that the quality first teaching was still there for the children at home. They were able to see the resources and be included in the conversations and the questions throughout the lesson. When working independently, those children were still able to use the chat function to ask the teacher or an LSA in the classroom about any questions they had about the work. The teacher really enjoyed the challenge of setting up the hybrid lessons and spending that time to develop their own style of teaching, thinking about which questioning approaches work best to support the children within school and the children at home. We did try hybrid across all the schools within the trust, and the primary schools have all given feedback. So in Highcliffe, one of the year 4 class teachers shared with me that they thought it was really scary at first. They didn't like using the big screen in the classroom, and they were a bit nervous about the parents and what the children at home would access and be hearing. But actually, they became really used to it. It's just part of our ongoing teaching now. More importantly, the children in the classroom, as well as the children at home, got the same opportunity, and they were able to access the lesson and contribute just like they would be if they were in the classroom. At Brox Hill, we used hybrid teaching really early on. So we had a pupil who was shielding since the start of the autumn term and actually wasn't able to come back into school. This was really supporting and helpful in the long run because he was able to be resilient and catch up with the curriculum and still get that quality first teaching. That teacher found for them the best approach was to use the visualizer point in the computer screen so that you didn't have to keep sharing and unsharing everything on your laptop. They were able just to see what was on the whiteboard displayed for everybody else. And each teacher used that strategy to work out what worked best for them. One of my teachers in year 2, so with one of the youngest cohorts to be trying the hybrid approach, said they really enjoyed it. Actually, it was a really important and brilliant experience that made the children at home and in school all feel together and still part of the class. It is tiring thinking about teaching the children at home and at school, and one of the positive parts of it was the ping pong style, the maths mastery style approach was able to work whether those children were at home or within school. And it was also extremely useful for helping push the vocabulary, which is a key focus for us, and wanting our children to have that environment which is vocabulary rich. And when they were at home, they don't have that same environment, but being part of the lessons, they were able to join and hear all of that vocabulary that was being used. As parents, we know they feel we always like to share their feedback, and actually we received some really positive feedback from parents based on the hybrid approach. A lot of parents felt that the team sessions were the most effective when the children were able to see their teacher and when they were able to hear what was going on in the classroom. The children were far more motivated than the work we set for them to complete on the VLE. It helped keep the children into a routine, and as one of the parents said, teachers know best. We know our children inside out and we know how to support them, and that's why the hybrid approach was really working. As we developed on our VLE, we helped that system get quicker and quicker and easier for our parents, and also they were really appreciative of that. Now, moving into this latest lockdown, lockdown 3.0, we looked at how our approach needed to change and how we could offer a far better approach than our previous lockdowns. We set out some expectations for our early years and year 1 teachers and then our year 2 to year 6 teachers. We kept reviewing these expectations and supporting our class and our teachers and our children from home and thinking about what was best for our children. For the early years in year 1, we continued to use Tapestry. We offered lots of equal opportunities across the trust, so we made sure that all schools were working collaboratively and using the same approaches to make sure that all the children were having those equal opportunities. We were able to share maths, English, phonics, videos, story uploads from our teachers, but we also felt it was really important to connect with our children at home. So we set up once a week a Teams meeting with Foundation and Year 1, which is a brilliant session. You get lots of pets and many children trying to work out how to unmute themselves. But it's fantastic to be able to see the children and have that well-being time as well. As I said, Tapestry is fantastic for able to give that instant feedback to those children who are at home. For year 2 to year 6, we moved on from our previous lockdown. We still used the VLE for setting of work. We held our live lessons, but we also developed to using recorded lessons where children could pause and play the videos to help support them at a time which was more suitable to them. Again, we developed the equal opportunities to make sure all of the schools were getting the same, but also to share that workload out across the trust. Some examples below are the expectations, but again, as I said, we reviewed this and tried to make sure that we were doing the best for our children. We tried to build in that physical activity every day and think about the children's well-being, and built in some PSHE sessions as well as our core lessons. One of the activities that we did, which I know all schools have had to do, is produce how they are developing their remote education and put that onto the website. I've added the link for our school website, so if you'd like to have a look at what we're doing, that's there and available for you. As we move forward, we wanted to think about how we could track what the children are doing and their engagement. Now on the right here is an example of taken from Microsoft Teams, so you can see when children have accessed the live lessons, but we also wanted to move forward with our tracking and think about whether just participating in a live lesson meant they were truly engaging. So we worked within our trust to think about how we could track engagement and decided on a 4-point scale, which we rate the children using our VLE. This is how we're able to think about whether children have engaged or not in the live lessons, as well as uploading their work and receiving feedback, but accessing the work that we've set for them. Using this scale has quickly enabled us to challenge any children who aren't accessing, or we don't think are accessing the work at a standard which is suitable for them. And then really thinking about the future, now we're coming out of this, we're reviewing our provision again. We're going back to our hybrid approach, so we're thinking about how we can be supporting the children who are in school as well as the children who are at home. So from March the 8th, we'll be moving back to using that hybrid approach and the VLE for any child who needs to isolate. Continue using our Teams meetings, but it is an ever-evolving picture, and we will be continuing to review what we do and think about how we can improve. Okay, now we've got a bit of time to see if anybody's got any questions, but if you have got any questions when you're watching this back later, feel free to pop your questions across to this email address and we'll come back to support you.
Thank you so much, Hannah, in all of that. There was one question that you might like to answer. Why we moved to recorded lessons rather than just continue the hybrid approach?
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, so we looked really carefully about the access to the live lessons as well as the work set up on the VLE. And we noticed that lots of children were accessing the live lessons, but found the pace could be too quick for them sometimes. We also found that there were clashes within families having to share devices and fitting around the family timetable and their workload, that not every child was able to access a live lesson. And just picking up a PowerPoint on our VLE wasn't as effective for them, whereas having a recorded session with their class teacher, talking through what they'd like to do, and the children being able to pause, think about what the teachers asked, and then continue, was far more effective for them. So we moved to a blended approach of using all three, so using our live lesson, the recorded lesson, and setting work for the children to do.
Thank you, Anna.
Is that all the questions, Michelle?
That's the only question I'd got, Anna. I don't know if anybody has got any further questions. I was just giving time for the chat feed, but I think, like you've just said, Anna, one of the key things was across the trust this year, there's been massive in getting Chromebooks out to our most disadvantaged pupils. But when it came to the challenge of live lessons, where there's multiple use in a house, even though we're sending multiple out as much as possible, children can't all be logged on to lessons at the same time. I think as well, Anna, from the feedback we had from parents, we've been very empathetic to the fact that they have been working all day. with this, and our younger children find it quite challenging sometimes with the IT side, and they have appreciated having the recorded lessons so that they can make the timetable work for them, haven't they, as well? So the blended approach kind of met all of our needs as best we could and as part of the journey. Well, if you have no questions, then I think this afternoon's webinar will finish, but please get in touch via the email if you would like to discuss or find out any more. Thank you.